father, I stood with my father, Jean Claude Guiet, by a corrugated metal hangar at the Lons-le-Saunier airport in eastern France, watching a blue and white Cessna 182 make its final approach. Jean Claude did not allow the anticipation he felt to show in his expression. It was 9 a.m. on a sunny summer day that promised to build into a very hot Jura afternoon. A single tattered windsock fluttered in the light breeze. The Cessna, an old one, was an old one, perfectly ordinary, except that someone had removed its transponder, the device that would have identified it to air traffic controllers. Bob was a pilot. The pilot was Bob Loubier, a 77-year-old Frenchman wearing Ray-Bans and a handlebar mustache. In the co-pilot seat rode his friend and former wife, Catherine, an easygoing beauty, some 20 years his junior. 5 days before, on June 24th, 2000, Bob and Jean Claude have been reunited for the first time since the liberation of Paris in 1944. They both had attended the opening of a museum in Warmlow, England, devoted to the memory of Violette Zabot, an English secret agent who was a heroine of the French resistance. Bob, who stood 6'4", wore a chest full of medals and ribbons. Jean Claude, who was 5'10", wore none of his. Their handshake turned into a long embrace. "My God, Jean, you've gotten very old," Bob said in French. Jean Claude replied, "I'm still 6 months younger than you." The museum opening was, of course, a general hubbub of war veterans, politicians, even a few movie stars attended. Newspaper reporters and a BBC film crew completed the interview. It was no place for competed for the interviews. It was no place for a real conversation. So Bob and Jean-Claude agreed to have a private reunion at the little chateau where my wife Carol and I spend summers in Nevy-sur-Seille, a village of 200 souls in the Jura region. Bob would fly in from Paris where he lived, and they would have a chance to go over the extraordinary history they shared with Violette, and also perhaps whatever they could divulge about the 56 years since they had seen each other last. We watched the Cessna descend toward the grassy airstrip bordered by white painted rocks. My father's face betrayed nothing. I was aflame with curiosity, especially as I knew that the wartime records of the unit both men had served with had finally been declassified. My father, a discreet, formal, French-born American, a perfectionist in all he did, had never spoken of things that were officially secret. The Cessna kissed the runway, its wheels sinking in a little ways into the grass, and taxied to the hangar. Bob and Catherine climbed out of the plane into our car. It was a short ride to the chateau along the bank of the Seille River, through the village, through our gated wall, past our little vineyard and truck pond, and up to the 250-year-old house. We settled on the terrace with coffee. Bob began by asking Jean-Claude, "What did you do after being dragged off to the airport by the MPs?" He alluded to their partying in Paris in September 1944. "I spent a few days at Baker Street," Jean-Claude replied. Number 64 Baker Street in London was at the time the headquarters of an organization called Special Operations Executive, or SOE. The few people who knew of its existence nicknamed it the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.